here, and we're good to go. Welcome to another episode of UncommonCents. I'm Craig Kamanis, and with me is, as usual, Dean Holmes. Welcome, Dean.
Hey, g'day everyone. Hi, Craig.
Okay, so April's pretty exciting with the Wealth Network partners. It's Advice April. And so what they've been working on and what we're going to ask Dean to run us through today is he's come up with 6 ways that you can refresh your advice process. We're not going to cover all 6 today because we want to talk through them in some detail and make sure that people get maximum benefit from it. So over the next 20 minutes, we're going to hopefully be able to work through the first 3 of them, and then you'll have to come back to UncommonCents in a couple of weeks' time to hear the other 3. I think in the classics, that's what they do to actually get people to come back.
Yeah, it's a classic cliffhanger that'll leave you wanting more, of course.
Exactly. So let's kick off. I think number 1 here, mate, you've got communicating a proven process in an initial client meeting. Why don't you take us through that one to get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most important thing when we imagine or reimagine what a first meeting would be with a client, and so the reimagine part, of course, is all about the fact that we might be practitioners that have done this for 5, 10, 15 or 20 years. And so things that we take for granted over that time, clients could be the exact opposite. So reinventing our initial client meeting or re-looking at it in the first instance, Craig, is all about changing our filter to the client's filter. And the best way of thinking about that is imagining, which is the reality for most of the time, that the client that is sitting in front of you, it's actually their first experience with a financial planner. And so therefore, they have no idea what to expect. They obviously understand that you're a professional, that you've studied, et cetera, and there's a wall of certificates behind you, but they have no idea of what the journey is going to be like as a client. And so we talk about the proven process in terms of not only having to create that within your business, which we can talk through another time, but then articulating that to the client so they know what the journey is going to be like. And so what that means is actually reassuring the clients that firstly, that they're in the right room. So the first step of this proven process that we communicate to clients is just communicating that the clients themselves and the advisor are one and the same, i.e., I'm a specialist that looks after doctors. Hey, Mr. Client, you happen to be a doctor. So making sure in that initial part of the proven process that the client and the advisor are both going to match one another. And then the second thing on top of that, in terms of this proven process, is all of the steps that the client is going to go on in that journey over the next hour, i.e. that first meeting, the first 3 months, and maybe all the way out until the whole 12-month period. And so what that does for a client who's never come into a meeting before with a financial planner is lets them know where the pain points are, which we already know about, but the client is going to be disappointed with if they're not aware of them in advance. And so the pain points we know about: signing forms, third-party authorities are going to be wrong. We're going to have to get things re-signed because the product provider changed a form or something like that. Talking to the clients about the effort that's involved in the first, second, and third meetings, for example, and then the journey, the effort that we will do in that following 1 month, 3 months, or 12 months in terms of what we will deliver to the client. And so it's not about product. It's not really about advice either. It's about client service. And so if you think about the proven process, Craig, is about communicating your client service journey to this prospect so they know what the journey is going to be like when they join up as part of the firm.
Yeah. Now, Dave, remind me, mate, I'm pretty sure it was you I was talking to about this, but it could have been another advisor in the market. But it's that whole, and then you've got to do this stupid paperwork because the law says I have to. And then you've got to do this because compliance says I have to. And I'm sure it was us having the conversation of going, there's no point in raising that and putting it to the client. Like, just make it part of the process.
Make it part of the process. So it's not, there's so many analogies, but other people that do compliance work as part of their process, like the pilot does the checklist every time he flies the plane, but he doesn't put the speaker on to tell you that he's checked the left wing and checked the right wing and done all of these things along the way. And so, sure, we can do our compliance things. We have to do our compliance things. Paragym was on the call today. We have to do our compliance elements, but we don't always have to mention that it's a compliance thing for us in front of our clients. Sometimes we don't have to mention it. And most importantly, we don't have to say that we have to do an SOA. We know that we have to do SOAs, but the moment that you attach negativity to the document, such as if you go through a client scenario and you say, "Oh, Mr. Client, in order for you to in order for me to take you on as a client, I have to write you a statement of advice, and I have to charge you $3,000 for that." All of those things has put negative connotations on the relationships. We have to do things. The client doesn't understand or know why we have to do those things. And what you've done at the same time is you're attaching your price, which clients will see value in price. You're attaching your price to the worst document in the world that you don't even like talking about because you have to do it. And so it's a really good example, Craig, about how a proven process actually rises us above the compliance and the admin and the documentation to talk about the client service journey. And so as a result of that, we can say, "Mr. Client, this is what it's like working with our firm. This is what happens at day one. You're in day one meeting. This is what happens in the first month. This is what happens after that." And so less about us having to do compliance documents. And the second benefit around this proven process, of course, at the same time, is all about the fact that the price and the value is all linked to the client service journey, not the fact that we have to do statements of advice. I love statements of advice. Statements of advice are free in my world. It's not something that we charge clients for.
Because they're paying for the entire process.
They're paying for the entire process. They're paying for the service. One of the outputs is a statement of advice, of course, but we don't attach any fee to a statement of advice.
Good call. All right, so that was number one. We're going well, Dean. Number two is building case studies to help explain how we add value.
Yep. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. And so the first one, linking to the new client journey, is the first thing that clients want in terms of case studies and also just being in the room is, as I hinted before, clients want to know that they're in the right place for the type of advice. And so if you think about some of the firms that we've worked with, like Fox and Hare, for example, whereby the type of client matches the advisors, so therefore people know they're in the right home. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you've had a client referred to you or something like that, there's a little bit of work that needs to be done to ensure that there's going to be a match from that perspective. And so case studies can help give examples of that, so clients know they're in the right place first and foremost. And then the second thing that clients want early on in that relationship is actually to, in my view, surprisingly, not to know that they're unique. Okay, so they want to know kind of that they're similar to everyone else, that they've had similar problems, they're in a similar wealth accumulation stage to the average. Okay, they definitely don't want to know that they're behind, and if they're ahead, they probably know that they're ahead. But it's kind of this reassurance of people to say, people in your situation experience the same type of pains that you're going through. And so if you think about just a general demographic of everyone goes through a pain of putting kids through school and childcare, for example, pain of paying down debt and associated with that, desire to retire earlier, those type of things. So there's these buckets of categories where clients want to actually fit into a bucket, us fitting them into a bucket in those things lets them know, A, we've seen it before, we've got the experience to help solve those problems, and they're not alone in that little community. And so case studies allow us to highlight these type of things at various points in the journey with a client. So if you think about the front end process, before you've actually sat down and met with a client, So think website, think podcasts, think YouTube videos, think LinkedIn Live, for example. How can we use that outward communication to actually put some case studies into it? So if we were doing this, Craig, I would be talking about a case study of how I've helped a particular financial planning firm build a bit of this front end process in terms of their case studies. And so one that comes to mind, because I've prepared earlier, of course, is that Ross and More Time Financial, he actually records podcasts as part of his, thought leadership and marketing process. But more importantly, what he does is he's able to use those podcasts, which are essentially verbal case studies, to give to different prospects as they come into his business. So if he has a new prospect that he's talking to that might be a business owner, he's able to pull his case study or his podcast out of his library. And that particular podcast was about a business owner that worked with Ross, that got their situation sorted out, so their business and financial health was working really well. So they had more time. And he sends that to the particular client, or the particular prospect. And so that's a really powerful tool, because it's much more targeted than just looking at your website and seeing all the fluff of what you might do. It's actually targeted to say, hey, Mr. Client, I know we're catching up in 2 weeks' time for an initial meeting. This is a podcast that I did with a client similar to yours.
Yep.
Okay. Put case studies in the second part of the process. So you've had that first meeting. You've left the client with some things to think about potentially in terms of working together. And then you send them another case study, which might be a case study and testimonial all merged into one. So it's a real live conversation. Ben Nash at Pivot does this really well. You'll see it on LinkedIn and the website, whereby he interviews his clients live, like we're doing now, or pre-recorded, but he interviews his clients and talks about their situation, what it was like beforehand, what the journey was like going through a financial planning process, and what the outcomes were. And so that's a case study as well that is really resonates with a consumer at the end of the day in terms of making those things happen.
Yeah, it's a really important point, I think, that you make, because I remember having a coffee once with someone and was telling them, these are all the things the business is doing. This is what we're up to. It's going to position like this and do that. And they said to me, that's all well and good, and we expect you to say that, but why don't you get your clients to tell us that's what you do? And that's how you do it. And I think that exact point you were just making there, Dean, around, let your clients bring the services and things you do to life through those case studies, whether it's examples that you've got that you could take them through, or live videos, or whatever it might be, or podcasts, or, just on the website, I guess, just a recommendation. And this is what I got. This is what I felt. This is how I got it. But it does make a big difference when the actual person who's receiving the service tells the world, that's what I got.
Absolutely. And you can target that as well to the right type of clients now, which is the unique thing, especially in small business, is that advisors in small business, we can only have 100 clients or 150 clients. And so we want to be really specific and targeted with the clients that we have in that really small community. And if you've got a couple of key targets that you look after in that small community of clients, it's very easy for us now to have one or two case studies, one or two references and referrals to actually really drive that point home that we have the capabilities to solve your problems. And here's a couple of clients that have gone through that side of it. Okay. So when I think about case studies, Craig, that's really what I'm thinking about. Like, I'm not thinking about a case study of going, I contributed $330,000 to superannuation, and therefore that grew at 7%, or I got a few tax deductions by doing a couple of smart things. Like, they are absolutely relevant strategy stuff. But I don't see the power of that working in terms of, we think of case studies in terms of acquiring new clients, communicating with potential new clients in the community. It's more about the service and the journey and the story, as opposed to the dollars and cents that a particular strategy might be able to, save for a client.
Yeah. Very good. All right. So we've done communicating a proven process in an initial client meeting. We've done building case studies to help explain how we add value. Let's now turn to a client contact calendar so that you can systemize your client communications.
Cool. So that last one, Craig, is all about, in essence, what I like to say is systematize the spontaneous. So if we think about a 12-month journey for clients, and all of our clients now are on ongoing service agreements or fixed term agreements, all of which last for 12 months. And so we've got to think about what the journey is going to be like for those 12 months. And some firms simply deliver one annual review at a particular point in time during those 12 months. And so what I'm trying to add on top of that, if that was the minimum or that's the core of what they offer, is actually some themes and additional things that the business can do in the context of, once again, client service and customer journey and all of those kind of things about what is it like to work with this business. How can we add in things that can feel spontaneous and can be relevant and timely for your target market and your community of clients? And so my favorite one in terms of systematize the spontaneous is that you can call your client every 213 days. Okay. It is a random number, but guess what? You can put that in Xplan or Advisor Logic as a recurring task and it will pop up and you can do it. The context for around 213 days, it's just a random point in time that you consistently call the client, but the client will never realize that you call them every 213 days. And you can shorten or lengthen that. But the point about it is that it's spontaneous from the client's perspective. And if you do this, a certain percentage of clients will say the following: I've been meaning to call you. Okay. And what a powerful thing that ends up being is that the client has an issue. They were thinking about calling you, and then the universe meant that you called, right? And so it's amazing that you're able to help solve that particular client question immediately when they needed your help. Okay. So that solves a little bit, but also we never know what comes out of those conversations. If it's just a hi and goodbye, it's still a really meaningful thing. Okay. And that's creates a lot of value in customer relationships. Something that can just detract from value is automated text message birthday notifications. And that the reason being is you're actually competing in a noisy space, and you're competing with, frankly, everyone that has a CRM that knows your date of birth. So on my birthday, I get 50% off my physio, 50% off my Pilates studio, and 50% off something else because they all offer me a birthday discount that's automated text message on the birthday, for example. And so that is the example, Craig, is if you send the same text message, you're just in that wrong community of who you want to be. And so there's a couple of different ways, obviously, that you can still send a nice message at a point in time around the birthday.
Yeah.
But, if you're the day before and acknowledging you're the day before, you're more likely to have that message read going, I hope you have a nice birthday tomorrow, is equally as good as a happy birthday on the birthday. But getting in the day early is so much better. There's no noise.
There's no noise, correct.
So the content calendar or the client contact calendar is all about planning out these different elements of when and how you contact your clients outside of the annual review. Okay. So just like we have Advice April in terms of the TWM partners, each of the financial planning businesses can have their own monthly themes about how they communicate with clients. So May, for example, might be a tax planning, super contribution, getting your finances in order pre-30 June. So you can have a theme around that, which means that your communication is relevant to that theme. Any meetings that you have or phone emails, etc., talk about that at that particular point in time. Then you fast forward into the next half of the year and there's school holidays themes, there's getting ready for Christmas themes, there's other housekeeping themes that you can have, as well as how you build in your investment communication or investment updates, for example, if you want to do those quarterly. But there's really an element to have a theme and a piece of communication leaving your business every month. Now, I'm not talking about the newsletter because often they're not read, but relevant and timely, shorter pieces of communication around topics that's relevant for the client at that particular time of year, uh, and or that's relevant that for the client, but you want to make that communication frequent. So the commitment that we do with the businesses around this type of communication is that we have to do anything for 12 months to really make a meaningful contribution to the effort. So right back in Uncommon Sense number 1, we talked about that we plan to do this. We plan to do this for 12 months to create and build this knowledge bank of what TWM Partners and Paragem are able to do. The same thing goes in the financial planning business is that you've got to plan out this 12 months of customer communication, and then you've got to deliver on all of it before clients get used to it. Okay. So Warren Buffett sends one letter once a year, but everyone is really, really excited to receive this one letter. And so, not saying that we all need to be Warren Buffett, but when he sent the first letter, no one would have cared. When he sent the third and fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh, and there's 48 of them now or something like that, the momentum comes over time as you send more pieces of communication to clients, as long as it's authentic in terms of the way in which it's delivered, that it's relevant to the community that you're sending it to, and that it's got a little bit of talkability. That it's the best thing that you could do is give sound bites to your clients that they say at barbecues.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's a great thing. That otherwise, everyone's going to end up talking about Sydney property prices. But giving quarterly your investment update is, yes, it's an investment update, but here's 3 things that get a conversation started at the barbecue around economics and finance. That's something that's really relevant that people would actually read.
Yeah. Yep. I think the other thing too, when you're talking about, communicating with clients, doing things for clients, and it's sort of similar to you can actually put a system around being spontaneous. The other one I always talk about is random acts of kindness. Now, you can also have a system around random acts of kindness. It's just,
absolutely,
when do you pick something up? When do you note something? Like, my daughter bought her first car. So do you send them a key ring and say, congratulations to your daughter, here's something for them for their car? It's the little things. And I know an advisor once had a client in who was saying that they could never go on holiday because they didn't trust anyone with their dog. And so after that meeting, the advisor said to her team, can we research the best dog sitting kennels in Perth? It was. Can we make sure we find like the best with, the most care and the most everything, and send it to this lady so that she can understand that there is a place that will actually care for her dog like her. And we can get her on a holiday. And just those kind of things can be put into a system. But you're right, they mean more than a birthday and Christmas and stuff that everyone wants to celebrate.
Absolutely. And it's think of always it's a system, because we always have the good idea. Like, I go, oh, I should thank that person. It's like you have to have the system post the idea, obviously. And that removes all the friction in actually getting it done. So in my drawer downstairs, I actually have the cards, the envelopes and the stamps, so that when I have this idea that I'd like to write someone a card to say thank you, or a card to inspire them or something in terms of what they're doing, it's really easy for me to grab it and start. And start for me is I always write the envelope. And then if I'm ready to write the message, I can. If I'm not, I know the envelope and the card is sitting there on the desk, and you do it. And you got to do it quickly, obviously. You don't want to send something a month after the particular event, for example. But that's a really good example, Craig, of going, I want to personalize my thoughts around a client in terms of what they're doing in their world. And the best way in doing that is to have the system that means that we can execute on it really quickly. So whether that someone in your team is actually the executor that would buy the gift, go and research something, etc., etc. But it always starts with that first pebble in the water, and often that's us. And the reason advisors fail in that second part is that they don't have a system or process behind them to execute on all of it in the back end.
Perfect, mate. Speaking of thank yous, thanks for running us through the first 3 today. I think that's all the time we've got for today, but that was really insightful. And the best news is we can come back in a fortnight's time and finish off the other 3, which I'm really looking forward to discussing then. So
very good. Thanks, Craig.
Cool.
Thanks everyone for listening. See you in a fortnight.
Bye.
Bye.